So welcome, thank you everyone for coming today. We're so excited about our special guest. Before we get started, before I introduce him, just a couple things I want to mention. First of all, thank you to I should say I'm Jamie Davies O'Leary with the Thomas B. Fordham Institute. This is part of our Education Speaker Series. We are co-hosting this with the Ohio Alliance for Public Charter Schools. So a big thanks to you for working with us so that we could locate the event this morning at the Union prior to the statewide conference, which many of you will be attending later today. Keep a lookout. For those of you who are on our mailing list for the speaker series, keep a lookout. We'll have one coming up in the next month or two. We're releasing findings from a survey of high-performing charter school leaders. If you're not on that mailing list, check out our website or contact me or Jeff after the event. We can make sure you're on those mailing lists and can attend future events. Today we're going to allow Mr. Campbell to speak for about 20 minutes, and then our hope is to have just a very informal discussion and Q&A. So be thinking of some great questions so we can make the most of our time together. All right, I'm excited to introduce Mr. Ken Campbell. He's a true pioneer in the charter school and choice movements and in education reform more broadly. He hails from Baton Rouge, but his impact on education spans far beyond the South. There are kids nationwide that have benefited from his work on behalf of students. He was a founding board member of the Black Alliance for Educational Options and served as that organization's president from 2010 to 2015. Since 2000, BAEO has worked to increase access to high-quality educational options for Black children, and I'm sure he'll share some of that with us this morning. He's one of the nation's foremost experts on charter schools. Under his leadership, BAEO brought top-performing charter schools to underserved regions in the South. He was the founding director of charter schools at the Louisiana Department of Education, where he helped rebuild the education infrastructure after Hurricane Katrina. So we know that New Orleans stands out among cities nationwide in the number of students attending charter schools. I think that number stands at 93%. So truly innovative in how it's re-envisioned a citywide system of education. So Mr. Campbell had a really big role to play in that as well. His career in education began in Washington, D.C., where he helped secure passage of the district's landmark charter reform law, or charter school law. Later, he founded the D.C. Charter School Resource Center, which cultivated school leaders and founders. He's a founding board member of 4.0 Schools, an organization that kindles new ideas in education and brings together smart people to develop game-changing products, companies, and schools. He's also a founding board member of the Building Excellent Schools program, which has brought us a very top-performing charter school here in Columbus Collegiate Academy, which has spawned into a network, the United Schools Network of Schools. So indirectly, thank you for that as well, Mr. Campbell. Finally, he holds a bachelor's degree in business administration from Averett College in Virginia, a master's degree in educational leadership from Touro University International. He served in the United States Army and retired from the U.S. Army Reserve in 2005 as a captain, so happy belated Veterans Day. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Campbell.
Thank you so much, Jamie and Jeff and the folks at OAPCS for bringing me in. Great being here. I always consider it an honor when people want to show up and hear the crazy stuff that runs around in my head like all the time. And so I think Fordham has an awesome reputation around both policy and advocacy. But you're not going to hear any policy from me this morning, right? You're going to hear stuff that I think we need to get the answers to in order for this movement to be successful as we go forward. So I can promise you no solutions today, but hopefully stuff that gets you really thinking about what we have to do over the course of the next 25 years. It is the day after Veterans Day, so Veterans Day is fast becoming my favorite holiday of all the holidays. And I'm sure most of the people here are probably on Facebook, but when you see just the sheer number of veterans and you see the camaraderie, you see the remembrances that people have, it's always truly special. And so I was on a plane yesterday, so I missed my normal Veterans Day routine, which is going with a group of veterans, and we try to find free food all day, right? That's kind of our thing. So my wife is a veteran, so she was giving me the play-by-play update as they went to breakfast at this place and lunch at this place and dinner at this place. So it's really, really cool. And I certainly want to, honor all the veterans out there and, veterans, their families, and all those folks. So I think that's important. One of the biggest memories for me at time Veterans Day is I had the great experience in probably 2000, 2001, 2002, something like that, of helping create the first charter school on a military base. Belle Chase Academy down south of New Orleans in Blackman Parish wanted to create a school that would serve the unique need of the military child. And so working with them over a number of years to get that school up and started and running is phenomenal. It is a great place to this day. It's an A-rated school in Louisiana, one of the oldest charter schools, just continuing to do a super job in serving those kids and those families. And so, very, very cool. Whenever I talk to people, I think you always have to start with kind of who you are. Kind of what makes you the person that you are. And for me, there are a couple of things. So 50 years ago, this past August, a young lady left Indiana and she traveled down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast. She traveled to the Gulf Coast because she was pregnant. And I don't know how, so I'm like 50, right? I see a lot of y'all like real young and stuff. So y'all probably don't remember when, like, you couldn't walk around in high school pregnant, like as a teenager, right? That's just, you couldn't, like back in the day, you couldn't do that. So what they used to do is they would, send teams to, go with their auntie in another state. They'd go away, they'd have a baby quietly, and then they'd move back. And so this 14-year-old girl, I don't know much about her. The only thing I know is that she's from Indiana. She was 14, don't know if she came willingly, if she was forced. But she came down to the Mississippi Gulf Coast, and on August 21st, she delivered a little boy. And the morning of October 22nd, the lady on your left, as you look at this, left, yes. Miss Ken Campbell adopted me, took me at the door of the hospital on the morning of August 22nd. And in my mind, it is like the greatest act of love that you could ever imagine. And it really reinforced something for me and gave me a different drive and determination. And I never could figure out what that was until much later in life when I read a quote by Benjamin Mays, which says that every man and woman is born into this world to do something unique and something distinctive. And if he or she does not do it, it will never be done. I firmly believe that. And I believe that, I was here for a purpose. I believe all of our kids are here for a purpose. And the important piece that you guys have to play in this, and that we all have to play, is to make sure that they are properly educated. Because education is the piece that helps them unlock what it is they were seeking to do. Right? And so it's incredibly important. So this lady, this is my mom and my aunt. They, neither of whom were married. They raised me in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we grew up with kind of all the poverty strikes. It was a single parent home. They cleaned houses and apartments and did ironing and washing for a living. Our house bordered the projects in Biloxi, Mississippi. We were on public assistance. So you got Black, Deep South, single parent household, adopted, public assistance. So you got all the stuff. But my mom was just an incredible lady, and the biggest issue for me is never wanting to disappoint her. So her walks with me to the library, when I was a kid, her reading the newspaper every morning, were things that were incredibly important and things that just affected me in ways that I didn't even understand at the time. So just much love to both of those ladies who have since passed on. But I think gave me a great upbringing, and I just think really reinforces in my mind the power and importance of each child. Now I got my own crew. So this is my wife and son, and this picture's up here for two reasons. My wife's up here because it's kind of hot. So we've been married for 29 years. She is absolutely gorgeous, and she is just a rock for me. We've been together so long that I wouldn't even know how to not be with her at this point in time. And she has just been incredibly supportive throughout my career and understands that I'm a mission guy, right? That I'm a cause guy. That what drives me each morning is getting up, being able to do this. And the amount of time that I spent on the road traveling to and fro, she's always been patient, understanding, and supportive. And I can't do nothing but love her for that. And then my son, who is 16 now, and this picture shows he's actually taller than his mom now, a little bit taller than his mom. I love this dude, he's our only child. And I had to really come to a realization a couple of years ago, which is hard as an education reformer to talk about, right? So it's, we always have this psychology around talking about it, but my son is just not this dude. This dude is just not really all that interesting. I mean, he's smart as can be, literate, can read, incredible vocabulary. He has traveled the world with us, so I'm sure he's going to be successful, but he is just not at all interested in homework and the grind and the stuff that you have to do. So he likes going to school for band and ROTC primarily. And the rest of the stuff, he's just like, okay, I'm here and I'm gonna figure out how to survive it. So this past spring I left BAEO, and it was actually pretty fortuitous because I got to spend a lot of time with him to make sure we made it through 10th grade. And so when all the people put, like people put their report cards on Facebook, and they got their bumper stickers. I need one that just said, "Thank God my kid survived another year." But when I think about our experiences with him, part of the reason that he is going to be successful is because of what his mom and I are able to provide for him, right? And I can't for the life of me imagine how single-parent households, parents in poverty, are able to deal with these issues, because I know what we've had to do in order to be able to do it. As a parent, I just, the amount of money that I spent on tutoring, for my son to make sure he gets over. I was a great student. Some of the stuff I can't even try to remember or fathom, in math and in chemistry. And if I have to do that, I always wonder, what do those folks who have much less than I do? What are their options? How do we help them? How do we make this work? And if on some level, people keep saying, well, if we just, we need more parental involvement, I am so tired of hearing the parental involvement excuse that people bring up. Because at the end of the day, if our educational success is based on poor parents being able to be more involved than they already are, to spend money that they don't have, to engage folks that they don't have, there's no chance that this is going to work. No chance. So, I always like folks to know that I'm a parent that struggles with some of these same issues that other people focus on also, right? So that's a little bit about me. This morning, again, I want to talk to you about what I consider to be kind of the contradictions and conflicts that we have to resolve going forward in this charter school movement in order for us to have the kind of long-term success that we want to be able to have. And, first of all, whenever you start to talk about charter schools now, you got to talk about quality. And quality is super important, super, super important. And I think for the longest time, we just didn't do a really good job on quality. And I can remember sitting in rooms in the 1990s where really smart people, we would sit around the table and we would say stuff like, let 1,000 flowers bloom. And the ones that are strong will survive and the weak ones will blow away. And we really, really believed that. I mean, we just, like members of the congregation, we were like, yes, that's what we need to do and it will work. And we believe that for three reasons. First of all, we believe that parents wouldn't want to stay in crappy schools, right? But most of you probably know, parents will fight you to the teeth to keep the worst school open with the worst principal and the worst possible teachers. We haven't been able to resolve that in our minds, but it's absolutely true. And I encourage you to go to just about any city or any state that has a charter school sector and try to close down schools, try to close down traditional public schools that have been failing for decades, and the fight is like a fight to the death. So we really, really, I think, underestimated, the reaction of parents. The second reason we felt this let 1,000 flowers bloom philosophy would work is because we felt like charter authorizers, right, were going to stand in the breach. Right? They're going to be the people to make sure that these bad schools get closed down eventually. But we didn't know that we're going to have a bunch of charter authorizers that were like the cowardly lion, afraid to do the task that we assigned them to do, afraid to take on the responsibility and to confront some of this stuff. And I know some people are kind of averse to conflict, and they're shivering. You gotta be, if you're gonna be in this, you gotta have the ability to be bold and to say, if what you're doing is not right for kids, we gotta stop this. We gotta stop this. And in too many places, people have been afraid to go out and do that. And I know folks in Ohio get tired of getting beat up all the time, of hearing how you don't want to be like Ohio. You don't want to be like Ohio. You travel just about anywhere, and they'll say, you don't want to be like Ohio. And I know y'all are tired of hearing that, because I'm tired of seeing it. Because I can tell you that I said it all the time when I was going out and helping people. But I do think, there have been some great moves in Ohio. I think HB2 is hopefully gonna, stiffen the spines of some of those people who, I believe, as I look at the law and the regulation, already had the authority to do what they needed to do. But if this helps them, I think it's a good thing. And at the end of the day, we have to give them every tool that we can to do the job that, we ask them to do. So I think that's, at the end of the day, a good thing. So you got the parents who, kind of let us down on quality. You got the authorizers who let us down on quality. And then last, we had the charter operators who let us down on quality. So I was an authorizer in Louisiana. I help people start schools throughout the country, really throughout the world. And I have never heard anybody come and say, I want to start this charter school. You say, well, what's your school going to be? Well, this is what we want to do. And at the end of the day, we're going to suck a little bit less than a school district. Seriously. I mean, never. I don't know if anybody has heard that, but I haven't heard. Nobody came into my office saying, hey, Ken, we want to start this school, and we're just going to suck a little bit less than them. And please authorize us. They come in and they say, we're going to be better. They don't say just a little bit better. They don't say the same. We're going to be significantly better. And then you roll forward 5 years when it's time to evaluate them, and they're like, well, I got all these tough kids. Yeah. All these kids, they come and they can't. Yeah, we know that. That's part of the reason why you're in this. And in fact, at the end of the day, you can't do the job. You need to be man or woman enough to come in and say, you know what? We tried this. We gave it our best effort. And for a lot of reasons, some our fault, some probably not our fault, we couldn't get it done. And I don't think there's any shame in that. One of the things that we started doing in Louisiana is really promoting and pushing people towards voluntary closure, to come in and just have those conversations and not to see it as, a blow to their ego, something that says they're bad people, because sometimes when they start school, they're so wrapped up in it that they believe that, their whole, personality, everything about them is being judged. And I think what we have to say is people who take on this task, who try to do this out of a place of genuineness and can't get it done, are real heroes when they come back and say, you know what, I tried, it's not working, we need to get these kids in a better environment. And that should not be a bad thing. We should find ways to encourage a lot more of that. So I talked about these contradictions. So, quality is important, but so is innovation. And I believe if there's one place where we've really fallen down in this charter school sector, it's on innovation. When you go and you look at our charter schools around the country, they look very much like traditional public schools, very much. And I don't want to hear people saying, well, we're spending more time, that's not innovation. That's cool, but it's not innovation. I don't want to hear that we brought in some computers, yeah, that's cool, right? But that's not innovation, right? In my mind, if we're not working actively to change the fundamental nature of school, what it means, the motivations of kids and teachers, we're missing the boat, right? This is our great opportunity, I think, now, to figure out how to do this really differently. You look at our movement, and I think, in particular, some of our CMOs, schools started by BES, some individual schools have proven that we can educate kids in an urban setting better than the traditional public school system. We've done that. But that can't be all that our movement is about. Because at the end of the day, then how we'll define success is we just need to be better than them. And I'm not in this just to be better than them, right? That's not the purpose. And anybody ever gone, like friends and family and folks will tell you about this great new restaurant, right, that they went to, and it was the best, like a life-changing experience, right? And so you get all your anticipation up, and you're ready to go, and you go into this restaurant, and you're expecting it to be phenomenal, and then you eat, and you do all stuff, and you go, man, it was just okay. didn't feel like I wasted my money, but it didn't change my life. You know, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I feel, you know, very much like that about innovation in charter schools, right? It's great, you know, it's a great meal. I'm happy that I went out and did it. But if we don't find a way to make this innovation something that changes the fundamental nature of schooling, right, it's just, you know, it's not going to be as satisfying for me. It's not. And I think that's where we ought to start talking about things like what the charter school movement really is. Is our movement now a charter school movement, or is it a CMO movement? And I don't think those are the same things. Some people might. I don't think they're the same things, right? I think you got this effort to grow and replicate CMOs, which I think is great and phenomenal. But I think their primary purpose is to prove that they can educate urban kids better than the school system. And we have now invested a lot of time and money and energy, and in many places that's our, you know, top priority. That's where all of our focus and all of our energy is growing that particular sector of the charter school movement. And if that's all we do, kids will be better off, but only incrementally, and only some kids, not enough kids, and we will have missed, I think, our best opportunity to change school, you know, in this country. I really believe that. Public and private schools. I love the fact that Fordham and folks in Ohio are investing heavily in the private school choice movement. I think it's important. But you gotta know that there are a lot of people out here who are education reform leaders who believe that the private school choice effort, vouchers, tax credits, all those things are a distraction from the real work of, you know, educating kids, right? They believe that the work they're doing is on the, you know, like the Republican debate, they're on the big stage, right? And then the people who support private school choice and those things, they're at the kiddie table, you know, with our Governor Jindal and, you know, some of those other folks, right? They're down there having this conversation about choice, but the real conversation is over here, where we're talking about all these other parts of reform. I believe that's a mistake, right? I believe we have to continue to fight for parental choice. We have to push private schools to be more innovative. When we talk about innovation, one of the great places to innovate is in the private school sector. The rules are a little bit different. The ability to do things that you can't do in traditional public schools is very real. So we have to find ways, I believe, to not just promote and grow this sector, but to push them also to be more innovative. This is the place, one of the places where innovation can really grow, I believe. And I also believe, on a similar vein, that we gotta find a way to bring, so we have these cousins in the charter school, right? These are the folks that you only see at Thanksgiving, and you only want to see at Thanksgiving, right? Otherwise, you're like, yeah, you know, we're kind of related. But if everybody asks, you know, we had different daddies, you know, you get all this kind of stuff, right? So we have this sector of our movement, the for-profit education sector, right? That people literally would like to kick over to another state. Just, can we get them the hell up out of here? I, again, believe that is a mistake. And I believe we must find a way to reconcile the relationship between the charter movement and for-profit. And the reason I believe that is because I don't think we can get to innovation without great infusions of cash from the private sector, right? If we think we're gonna win this at the end of the day just with philanthropy, there ain't enough money. There ain't enough philanthropy, and the folks are gonna get tired of funding the same old stuff eventually. And you see right now, right? So when we start this, the Walton Foundation will fund the growth and development of charter schools in just about any state. They put millions of dollars, and I think phenomenal investments in being able to do that. But Walton and all the foundations are increasingly focused only on certain geographies. So there are only certain states where they're gonna fund stuff now. So Mississippi and Alabama both have great charter school laws. There's nobody spending money down there to help them get started. Nobody. The federal startup grant program is, I have no idea what the hell this is, right? So, you know, we don't have the resources, one, to really grow this sector anymore, because again, all the investment is only in certain states, only in certain types of schools. And so we've gotta find a way to get an infusion of capital into this movement and into this market. And so, you know, our friends, right, our cousins, we gotta find a way to get them to act better when they get to the table, right? So we gotta do some of that. And I was at one of them, so I know we did stuff that was bad, right? But we gotta find ways, I think, to reconcile that at the Because we cannot, I believe, continue to grow and thrive if our expectation is that for the next 25 years, we're going to have the same levels of philanthropy. I just don't believe that that's going to happen. Just don't believe it. Coke 45. Don't let the smooth taste fool you, right? Don't let the smooth taste fool you. So I think it's important that even though we're approaching 25 years, that we got to understand that we are still in a fight every day for what it is we want to do. Do not believe for a second that there are people out there who do not want to destroy you at every turn, because they absolutely do. And I'm gonna go to the I want to make sure I get this right? So Hillary, her exact quote: most charter schools don't take the hardest to teach kids, or if they do, they don't keep them. Now there are some people who are like, well, she's misinformed and we need to get her the facts. Don't let the smooth things fool you. She knows the facts. That was a very intentional comment that was made to speak to a very specific constituency to begin to define this debate in different terms. Do not be fooled. There are people who, how many RV people we got in here, right? The OJs, right? Backstabbers. What they say? They smile in your face, but all the time they want to take your place. The backstabbers. There are people, I guarantee you, who are extending a hand, an olive branch, and we just want to collaborate, and we want to work more closely with you, and we want you to work more closely with us, and then as soon as you turn your back with the other hand, they're looking to stab you. There are some things that we cannot compromise on at the end of the day. Doesn't mean we always got to fight, but we can't compromise on giving our kids 75, 80 cents on the dollar and other kids get more. We can't compromise on that. We can't compromise if it means we gotta keep people at our schools who can't teach. You know, there's no compromise on some of this stuff. Because sometimes compromise means kids lose. And if compromise means kids lose, that's a problem. That doesn't say you never compromise, but it certainly means that we gotta be smart and understand that there are people who are fighting us every day, and we gotta be willing to fight. We gotta have warriors who are part of this, and it's great that we got all these intellectual people and all these policy people, but sometimes we need people that's gonna hold signs, kick rocks, knock down doors, do all that kind of stuff that we gotta do. We need warriors in this, and not just people who think, you know, my job is to run a good school. We gotta do more. Talk about conflict. At the same time, every conflict cannot be a fight to the death, right? We gotta find a way in our politics, and I don't know how we do this. Again, I told you, I'm not giving you any answers. I'm just giving you stuff that we need to think about, right? So at the same time that we gotta fight, because we gotta fight, we also gotta win friends. And we gotta try to find ways to win victories without creating mortal enemies, right? If the whole thing means in order for us to survive, you have to die, right? We are creating mortal enemies. I don't know how we do both of those things at the same time. I don't. Because the only way I know how to fight, I'm an army dude, right? The only way I know how to fight is to destroy you, right? That's all I know. But I think we have to be savvy enough and smart enough to figure out how to fight without creating so many mortal enemies who will hunker down, continue to fight us, and find ways ultimately, because everything is cyclical, right? All the stuff that goes around comes around. So we got to figure out a way to do this without creating people who absolutely hate us and everything that we want to do. Next, in this country, we are in a really interesting place. And some people believe that it's about American rights and American values. And I believe that it's really about human rights. And it's about justice. And it's about dignity. And it's about treating people with respect so that they feel like humans, like they feel like they're a part of this whole thing. We, as folks who support charter schools, cannot stick our heads in the sand and act like this stuff is not happening. We have to, if we care about kids and families, we have to let them know that we understand what they're dealing with and what they're going through. And we have to find ways to be supportive. If we're going to be schools, we're going to be community schools, we're going to be out there. When the community hurts, we got to hurt. And they got to see that we hurt, right? If you know, the community is in an uproar and we get our school and we're out at 3 and we're back in the suburbs in our house, chilling out, eating filet mignon, then there's an issue, right? When our community is in pain, our schools have to show that we understand what you're going through. When people are fighting for, just the rights, you got the Black Lives Matter movement, you got, the police violence, you got immigration reform, you got, marriage equality, you got all these things where really I feel like there's an effort to make people feel like they're not a part of us. We gotta make everybody feel like they're a part of that, and we have to understand that we have a role to play in it. And I talked about politics earlier, and I believe this is important, right? I think when we go to the State House and we advocate for the stuff we want for our schools, many times the people who support us are some of the people who really, really are against all the stuff that our kids and families need. And we gotta just be brutally honest about it. So it's fine for you to say, look, I believe this school thing is gonna help you, it's gonna turn your life around, but you know what, I don't give a damn about healthcare, because no, we can't do that. And I'm not gonna do anything about unemployment, because we can't do that. And we're gonna just, our tax policy is gonna be one that penalizes the poor more than the rich. If that's what we're doing, right, at the end of the day, are we really helping kids and families? Or are we saying, we'll give you this piece, but we're not giving you any of the other pieces? Because a charter school leader will tell you right now that a sick parent at home who's dealing with diabetes on a regular basis can totally negate weeks of good teaching and learning that you have with that child. Absolutely. Broken heart, poverty is a real issue. And if we're going to be serious about solving the problem of kids and families, we need to understand that there are poverty issues and there are issues about human rights, justice, and dignity that we also have to deal with. So when we go to the State House and advocate for our charter school stuff, we have to do that. There's nothing wrong with being able to say, also, I know where you stand on this healthcare thing, but you need to understand how it affects our kids and our families, right? I know where you stand on this tax policy, but our families are buying food, and if the only tax they have is a sales tax, that's hitting them in the pocket harder than other people. We have to have those kind of conversations. And it's not a Democrat or Republican thing, it is a human thing. It is a family thing. And I do believe that, again, we have a responsibility to take it. But again, it's conflict, right? It's conflict. It's difficult to go in and do these things. Very difficult. We have a governor's race right now in Louisiana, where Democrat John Bel Edwards is probably going to win in Louisiana, which is just hard to even fathom. But I think there's a real chance that he can win. And I believe he will be great for kids and families in a lot of ways, but he hates our issue, right? So we got to figure out how to make this work better and win more friends. And then finally, our movement was born out of the belief that we were giving poor families, in particular, the short end of the stick, right? That our educational system was not allowing them to grow and thrive, was not giving them what they needed to be successful adults in this world. And we have allowed ourselves, in many cases, to lose the moral authority. We've allowed ourselves to lose the moral high ground. And so people like Hillary Clinton can get up and say that we don't take the hardest to educate kids. She can say that because in some cases it's true, right? If we can't hold a mirror up to ourselves and say, we got some stuff we need to fix, that's a problem, right? And that's not to say every school is doing practices that are wrong, but we have enough of them. And if we don't have trust and transparency, if we're not the people who are holding the line and saying to ourselves, hey, we're not going to do this for kids, we're not going to cheat kids in this fashion, if we're not going to do that, then this is never going to work. This is never going to work. We should be the people that are calling them out on stuff that they're doing. But we've allowed that whole thing to get flipped. And so we're known as the people who are simply interested in privatizing education. We are the folks who are kicking out kids because they wait for folks to educate. We are the folks that are only focused on test scores, standardized testing, getting rid of bad teachers, all the stuff that's out there. We allow that stuff to stick to us. And we allow it because of the way that we communicate what we're doing and because of some of our practices. If we're going to regain the moral high ground, we have to be the people that says not on the power election. We're not going to have that. We're not. So, I don't know how we're going to get all these things done, but I do know, and folks, this is the Lorax, the unless stone. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. I really do believe that folks like the people in this room have to help lead conversations to get us past these contradictions, right? The quality innovation piece, right? How do we do that? How do we do both? Because we've got to do both. And how do we do it? How do we deal with our politics? How do we continue to win the battles and wars that we need for our kids, while at the same time not producing enemies that someday will come back stronger with the ability to destroy us and the desire to destroy us? How do we go in and fight for the things that our kids need, but at the same time be having real conversations about how some of the other policies that are not education policies affect our kids and families? Because if we want to solve this, if we want this education piece to work, we got to answer those questions. We got to find ways. I wish I was smart enough to have the answer to how we deal with those contradictions and conflicts. I do. But I'm not. And I'm totally fine saying I'm not. But part of what I feel like my responsibility is to keep bringing them up, to keep pushing them, to keep hammering people with them so that we start to talk about it. Because it's not acceptable for us to just roll through the status quo the way we're doing. We will not get to where we want to get to. Thank you for coming this morning. I hope I tickled your mind at least a little bit, some of the crazy stuff that I wake up like at 4 o'clock in the morning going, oh my God, how are we gonna deal with this kind of stuff. So it's good to be able to push some of that onto other people. And hopefully if we push it onto enough people, we'll all start to take it on and we'll figure out how to resolve some of those things. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
We don't have another mic, but I think the room's small enough we can just begin our Q&A.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A couple of things I'd just like to respond to. I think the fight in closing, in quotes, poor school for quality schools is because parents define quality different than states.
Yes.
And I'm going to link that statement to lack of innovation, which I totally agree. Too many of our charter schools look like mini district schools. However, when you live in the state with the toughest closure law in the land, how are we really going to respond to innovation? When I think of innovative things that have been created in our country, it wasn't because someone had a hammer over someone and said, and do it within 2 years,
Exactly.
or you're going to be closed.
Yes.
And so we go back to what we know.
Yeah.
Pouring this information into kids' heads, and the heads are much different than they were.
Absolutely.
So this innovation and quality and different definitions of quality, until we start dealing with some of that, quality today is test scores.
Yeah.
Everyone's pushing for better test scores, and if you don't get them, you're going to be closed. And we have schools filled with children of poverty, children with lots of issues.
Yes.
We need lots of help to take care of them. We get about, 60 to 70 cents on the dollar in these schools to deal with all of this. So I think the issues are very core.
Mm-hmm.
And the opponents in Ohio have the movement in a stranglehold right now.
I think you made great points, and I think you're exactly right. I mean, the question is, can we get to the point where authorizers can, for example, have a portfolio? And this is just one idea, right? Where you say that X% of our schools are just really going to be focused on quality, but we got to have some place, some ability, right, to try something that's radically different, to do something that's really different. And we're going to give them more space. We're going to give them more opportunity, to be able to do that. And I think there are some authorizers that would take on that risk, right, if it was produced that way, right? It's not going to be every school, but if it's a small percentage of schools, but I think it also, though, has to be truly innovative and different, right? It's not just, well, we're a bad school, or we're struggling to improve our test scores, right? It really is, we're going to try something that's very different. So one of the things we're experimenting with now at 4.0 schools is this idea of micro schools, right? Can you drop a tiny, tiny school, right? 15, 20 kids into the middle of a school, right? Give them the ability to just be a school within a school. Only work with a small number of kids, but do things that are really, really super different. Have conversations with parents and let them know. So look, this is what we're gonna try to do. We're gonna completely change the way this works. But we need parents who understand, hey, look, I wanna give this a shot. And we need authorizers who understand we're gonna give this a shot. And you have to continue to play those things out. It's hard, because nobody wants to get labeled with the notion of quote, unquote, experimenting on kids. But I do think that there are some parents who, if it's the right program, if it's done the right way, can really see it and kind of say, yeah, I think, I think there's something there. I am right now enamored, and I'm doing some writing on this idea of community learning centers. Because one of the big issues that I believe we struggle with is student and staff motivation. Right? I think that's a big, big issue. But what you find is there are a lot of these creative places like Bucket Works in Milwaukee and other places that are like community centers with a lot of space, right? Flexible use space. And they're able to go in and they're able to engage kids on a relatively short term around projects, around things, and everybody jumps in and everybody does it. We're gonna tear apart and build up a computer. We're gonna do this robotics challenge, whatever like that. And the motivation of teachers and kids in those settings is phenomenal, right? But it's short term and it's limited. So part of my thinking is, how do we make this long term, right? Can you create something like this that's actually a school that operates every day, right? All day and before hours, and how it might work. I'm really, kind of thinking about stuff like that. So I do think there are things that we need to think about doing. I'm not sure what all of them are. But again, that's why it's a contradiction. That quality versus innovation piece is absolutely a contradiction. Don't have a way to really answer it, but I think we have to answer it at the end of the day.
It's interesting how you talk about the risk. Yesterday I was at an event and I spoke with a woman that was describing, she was a mental health worker and wanted to look into creating a charter school that would serve students struggling to stay sober. So in a school environment. It was fascinating, but on the one hand I kept thinking, how would that work?
Yeah.
What type of authorizer would want to take on that level of risk?
Yes.
You use the word risk. And I hear what Sally's saying. How in the world do you balance that?
Yeah.
Given that we're putting in place new controls, many of which are long overdue,
Yep.
and regulations to balance quality, how do we create the space for that?
I don't know if anybody's seen these ads. I see them in Louisiana, and I don't know if I see them in other places. There's this, is it XQ or QX? Some like new high school thing. They've been all over TV, right? That they're doing this big design process they're doing this big competition to design America's next great model of high school. And I think they're investing like $50 million in 10 to 15 groups, right? And so there's this whole competition where they have to do, concept, and they have to submit the concept and how it might work. And then from all those concept papers, they'll choose, a certain number to go to the next round. And then ultimately those people will get chosen, get like $50 million to really design and put this high school into operation. I think it has to be, I think intentionality is very important and in some cases underrated, right? I don't think we go into things with enough intentionality. And so I think right now with our charter school movement, what we are primarily saying is that our intention is to create better schools. And I think part of our movement has to be our intention is to create new and different and radically different innovative schools. And I think if you do that, it pushes things in a different way. And the Mind Trust just did a report out of Indiana on this whole idea of innovation. So it's hard, it is a risk, but I think intentionality and being very clear about what you're trying to do potentially can make a difference.
I was thinking when you guys were talking about risk, I was thinking like it's pretty relative because going into public schools is risky for some people, and I don't think we point shine enough light on that reality. But I also, when you were talking about intentionality, I was thinking maybe we are focusing too much on designing schools and not systems. And I think what we are missing, or maybe what another contradiction is that our teacher education programs, our educational administration programs aren't allowing that kind of innovation, or we don't have that kind of connection to teacher education programs.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, have you seen any success in building university partnerships with schools or districts?
I would say we're so far away from that. We're just so incredible. So if I had to, so educator prep programs, I think, are a big challenge for us in the country across the board. And in many places, we just don't have the kind of level of talent coming out that we really need. And I think the first focus is kind of on, that. There's another focus on getting more minority teachers, right? So we focus on all these different things, but I don't think anybody, again, is focused on, can we create, teachers to teach in innovative schools? And in fact, I don't even know. So, when I talked about these community learning centers, right? You go to these centers and you have people that come in and help kids learn how to do stuff over a relatively short period of time. They don't have any teaching credentials. They haven't been to any schools of education, but kids hang off every single word that they say. They're able to engage and touch those kids in ways that people, in the regular daily classroom can't. And I don't know if that's art, magic, personality. I don't know what it is. I don't believe we have studied it at all. And in fact, I would argue people just consider it, something that's unique, kind of like magic. It happens every now and then. But I believe that it's more than magic. I believe it's format, it's structure, it's the way that their minds are built, right, to be able to engage those kids. And I think we need to find ways to harness more of that if we're going to get those folks into the classroom. It was like, most people had like one teacher who just seemed like he was nuts. She was nuts. I mean, they just did all this weird, crazy kind of stuff, but for some reason it worked, for us as a kid. And I remember when I was in high school, we had Miss McCon, and Miss McCon taught marine biology. I grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi. And so we would spend a lot of time on the beach. We'd go out to Ship Island. We'd do all this crazy seagulls and stingrays and just all this kind of crazy stuff. She was an absolute nut. And I know there's no way anybody was looking over like lesson plans and all that kind of stuff. But I probably learned more in that class than in any class that I've been in. So on some level, I don't know how we do, but everybody probably had one of those experiences at some point. And you can't really figure out why. But I do think there are a lot more people who are like that. There are probably people, many of whom do not want to and cannot sit through an educator preparation program. So I think we have a lot more people who could do this, but they're not in our classrooms. Maybe because the classrooms probably feel like they're too stringent for the kids and they're too stringent for some of the adults. So other thoughts, comments?
I wrote down a very similar question to what you were. What role do universities play in encouraging teachers to be innovative, but also encouraging people in prep programs to look into charter schools as a viable career option? I sometimes feel like when we interview people, we're a last resort. Like, I couldn't get in this district, so I might as well apply to a charter school. So we're kind of sometimes seen as taking the lowest level teachers because they couldn't get into a regular district. And I might be, a result of that, relocating and not being able to get a job, and I ended up getting a job in a charter, and I've been there for 7 years, and I never see myself leaving because of the fact that I have so much freedom. But I wonder in this question of innovation, how much effective school leaders play a part. Because we talk about schools closing, and we talk about buildings being innovative. Where does the role in making sure we provide and find high quality school leaders that can viably keep a school open? Where do we find those people, or where do we give the people that are already in those roles the support to stay? We need to know in a charter school the burnout is high. You are your own principal, you're everything, you're a superintendent, and where does the support come? And I would say, like, great teachers don't always make great leaders. So a lot of schools get caught in, this was a great teacher, now we're gonna make them the principal, but they don't have the tools or the toolkit to be successful, and the school goes down. And so where does that supportive role come from as well?
No, again, I think that's a great point. And when I look at, I'm gonna try not to get on a tangent about how bad the whole system is, because I just feel like it's a house of cards. It will never work. So, but we have, in the same way, brilliant leaders out there who I think could be phenomenal at leading a school. I don't think there's real, you gotta have been a teacher for this long in order. I mean, people say that. I don't buy it. I think so. When I was in the Army, I had one of the greatest experience that I had in the Army was I and I was a lieutenant, and I was a platoon leader in a boat platoon. And so, a lot of people don't know, but the Army has tons of boats, right? All the port operations that are done by the Army. So tugboats, commuter boats that take, equipment from big ships to the shore, all those things. All that stuff is done by the Army. And so I had a boat unit. We had 5 watercraft that would do riverine operations. And we had boat engineers, guys who have been enlisted for a long time that could fix anything that was potentially wrong with these vehicles. The school to go and be a boat engineer was like 7 months long, right, in order to be able to do it. The school to be able to drive a boat, the folks who drove the coxswains, was also about 7 months long, right? So it's real technical, real serious stuff. I had no idea how to do any of that stuff. But if you went back to my folks today, they would probably tell you that I was one of the best leaders that they had. And I had no idea what it was. But you gotta know how to lead people. You gotta know how to inspire and motivate people. And you gotta help people to be their best. And you gotta make sure that they know you're concerned for their welfare. So I think the same way that in our teaching workforce, we have created this kind of artificial system. It's really the mafia. I mean, the whole thing is the mafia. The whole thing. So it's 5 families really control like all the education, right? It's the teachers union, it's the principals union, it's the bus drivers union, it's the school boards association, and it's the athletics association. No, seriously, I mean, those 5 entities control the whole thing. And in order to be a member of the mafia, you have to have certification, right? So that whole system, right, is rigged in that way. And until you find a way to break that up, it's hard. But it really, it is like the 5 families, I think. That's just me. So, is that on tape? I want any real mafia people coming in.
We can edit.
No, yes, sir.
My primary focus is on our most disadvantaged students from our most disadvantaged families. And my question is, how does choice help our very most disadvantaged students? Because once you pull out the students whose families are functional enough and are less disadvantaged and able to go out and select a school, you've left behind a whole cohort of students whose families don't have that and can't do that. I guess what I'm thinking about is neither one of my parents went past 8th grade.
Yeah.
The only way I got a good education was because the school that they had to send me to was a good school. But if there was no way they could make a choice, they didn't have the ability, they didn't, they were working 3 and 4 part-time jobs at minimum wages. And my concern is the whole choice movement is all about increasing the racial isolation and the poverty of our most disadvantaged students and helping those whose families are functional enough to be able to leave those children behind. And I think it's easy to leave those children behind. Why isn't the focus on making sure our most disadvantaged students get the resources that the students from wealthy suburban school districts get?
So 2 things. First of all, this is not, in my mind, a zero-sum game, right? It's not like you can only do one or the other, right? I would argue we should be doing both, right? We should absolutely be giving parents choice because some of those kids and some of those families can choose and do choose. My experience in Louisiana, in Ohio, and other places is some of the most disadvantaged families, if they believe that there is a real option for them, will absolutely go and explore it. And I've seen parents wait in line when you had voucher programs, and they literally would sit there in lines for a day and a half to try to get one. And then when you sit and talk to them about their income, your mind is just blown because you go, I don't even know how it's possible for you to survive on this, but they are. So I don't want us to believe that poverty means you can't choose. I fundamentally completely disagree with that. At the same time, but at the same time, there are families, and this is the thing, families of poverty and families of wealth who cannot make choices. So, just because families can afford to live in a school district, doesn't mean that they're in a good school for their child. There are families with a lot of money who are not making great choices for their children today and every day in our school districts. And it is simply a function of where they live. So I think you gotta try to make the school that people are assigned to or they're supposed to go to as strong as you can make it. And I think there should be people focusing on doing that. But I also believe people need to be creating alternatives and choices for kids and families who need them. And there need to be people who are working with families to make sure they understand what the choices look like and what they can do. And I don't think we've done a good enough job of any of those. I think the concern is valid, but I don't think that's a reason not to have choice.
I think partly in response to that too, though, our most disadvantaged and our poorest children live in certain neighborhoods and areas. If we give them choice within that neighborhood, it is not just those that have it together the most that choose that. And I think that in turn, so it isn't just the ones that are higher functioning that choose the charter school that's within a mile of a traditional district school.
There might be anecdotes, but if you look at any empirical study, starting with New Orleans, as you know, there are high-performing charter schools in New Orleans that have vacancies, and there are very low-performing charter schools in certain neighborhoods in New Orleans that are have way too many people applying for this. I don't think there's any empirical.
Yeah, so we can talk about that a little bit later, but I think the thing to understand and realize is that you actually have families that are making a choice based on where they live. So don't believe that just because those families choose those schools, it's because they don't know how to choose, right? They are making an affirmative choice to go to a school in their neighborhood, recognizing that it might not be as good as some of these other schools. The problem that policymakers have is they believe that our sole focus should be, well, we need to close bad schools and put them in higher performing schools. In some instances, parents are choosing for different reasons, and we don't understand why parents choose. So don't mistake parents doing that as them not understanding choice or not wanting to make a choice. They are choosing specifically to go to those schools, and there's a reason why, and we need to do a better job of understanding that. All right, thank you. I appreciate it.